Welcome to Unapologetically Sensitive, where you can learn, relate, laugh, and maybe even live a bolder, brighter life. I'm your host, Patricia Young. This is a weekly podcast where we explore the strengths we have because of our sensitivity and some of the challenges it poses as well. The information in this podcast is not a substitute for help from a licensed mental health professional. Hey there. To the creatives, healers, sensitives, and deep thinkers, welcome. How the heck are you? I think we are the beginning of June by the time you hear this. It's only May right now, the very beginning. So how's it going? How many of you feel totally annoyed when I ask about the weather? It's okay. You can keep feeling annoyed and you can just skip past the intro if it bugs you. Anyways, this is a follow-up episode to 193 with Jen, where she was going to be coming out to San Diego. We've known each other for 5 years, have never met in person, and we talk about what the weekend was like. But the bigger picture is that we talk about how do we take when we're reflected really well in someone's eyes and it feels yummy. How do we move from that to refocusing on ourselves so that we can know our strengths and our gifts? And how do we affirm who we are and how we show up in the world so that we can enjoy those connections with others, but we're not dependent on that reflection from other people. And Jen and I both talk about some shifts in how we're feeling and having the ability to rest in the attachment and in ways that I felt like I was too much before, and being on the other end of having Jen here and having people from her life need her time and attention. And it didn't feel like an interruption or an intrusion. It didn't feel like it was annoying. Has allowed me to have much more grace to show up how I show up and not judging it. We also talk about transitional objects, nonviolent communication as usual. I think it's a great episode that you're going to enjoy. And now, on to the show. Hey, Jen.
Hi, Patricia.
How are you?
I'm good.
You're back in Philly.
Yes.
I'm here alone in San Diego. I want to talk today about the trip, and I've had feels like a very significant shift. I think you were impacted differently. And I think that if we talk about this, there's benefit to the listener also. And we've had a couple of days, we talked about recording while you were here in San Diego. So if you haven't listened to episode 193, we talk about Jen coming to San Diego as a surprise. We've known each other 5 years. We've never met in person. And this was the first time that we met. So I want to talk a little bit about what that was like. I think I'm going to let you start a little bit.
Okay. I know, it's like where to start. It was so wonderful.
It was.
I think we were both kind of sharing, being left with like, why didn't we do this sooner? I mean, of course, COVID was in there in those 5 years. Right. So we won't give ourselves too much of a hassle about that. But it was so beautiful. I love the confirmation. It didn't feel strange or weird. I just got to hug you, and that was cool. I like just how affirming it was that some of these long distance relationships and friendships are so rich. So it wasn't like, I don't know what I was expecting, but this kind of, what's it going to be like to be in person? And is there going to be something, I don't know, just like, well, how is that going to be different? And I didn't find any kind of difference. It was just so delightful to jump up and down on the escalator coming off the plane. Oh, and I hadn't been on a plane in 15 years, so that was kind of weird.
Right.
So the flight was great, all the setup, the birthday present that it was, and how thoughtful. And then just getting to see you and spend time with you. It was exactly what I wanted. It was like the perfect birthday present. I really just wanted a day in the life. I lucked out and got several days in the life, including getting to kayak with you and just really just hang out as if I was a local friend.
Yeah. Yeah. I know before you came, what was up for me the most, and I've been processing through this, and I'm pretty sure that we talked about this in the previous episode, is that fear of what if the relationship ends? And based on my history, that has happened. I've had people that I thought we were very close, and really without much warning, the relationship ended, and it's happened to me more than once. And that was more of my concern, or that you were going to cancel and not come out. And I've really been thinking about this a lot, that sometimes it really helps to be direct in relationships. And there are times, I'm not talking about with you and I, But sometimes we do this polite thing where people say, let's get together. And the kind thing is to go yes without really having the intention, because sometimes there are reasons why we don't want to be hurtful to people. I don't know why I'm looking at you and interpreting like, are you agreeing? Are you disagreeing?
I am agreeing. I'm thinking about the times that I do that for sure. Or even just how I'm not thoughtful about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like the social scripts.
Right.
So, and just life. I'm such a fly by the seat of my pants kind of person that often my experience is time will go by and I'm like, geez, why haven't I seen anybody?
Right. And you and I have talked about with ADHD, that's about object constancy. And for me, I need to have my things out where I can see them, because if you put them where I can't see them, I forget them. If there's food in the fridge that's not where I can see it, I forget it. If my keys aren't out, I can't find them. That also is true for relationships if you have ADHD, that oftentimes people with ADHD are not great about keeping up on friendships because it's kind of like out of sight, out of mind. It doesn't exist. So factoring those things in when we are in relationship, and you and I talked before we recorded about what we kind of wanted to focus on, and you and I have different lenses, and that's also okay. So can we honor how we show up, how we process, how our brains work, how we filter things, and have that be okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that's part of the beautiful thing about our friendship is that often when we talk, I don't know if the distance was some of what helped this, because so much of it would happen via Polo or via FaceTime. And Polo too, because it's asynchronous, right? So you're there and you're listening to someone and you're taking in what they're saying deeply without a chance to jump right in and respond. So it really gets to be, oh, okay, look at what this person is going through. And that amount of space, I mean, having done that with you for so many years, I think it has had to have had an impact. Now, there's that. There's also our training as therapists where we're meant to appreciate that there's a whole world there with how the person in front of us is perceiving. And that's informed by attachment, their history, stress levels, what they're going through, where they are in their journey. But there's such a big difference between being able to do that in a role at work versus being able to do that in my own life. So having that spaciousness there. So we were talking about coming at this through two different lenses. I think I'd like to shut up and listen a little bit more about your lens, and then maybe I can talk about mine, because we are having different experiences, and even in the same quote unquote friendship, right? And this is something I think that our field historically, if you look at research from, I'm talking decades ago, right? There were some assumptions made that if children were growing up in the same household, that they were having the same type of experience. Or we talk about marriages. It's like you have a marriage or you have a relationship, but they're very different, right? You're not having the same experience.
Right. For me, I had that fear of either you not coming or the relationship ending. And that's just part of my history. And I think that we talked about that a little bit before you came out. And then you came to visit. And I think what struck me the most was just how easy it was to be together. I mean, just it felt pretty seamless. I know what I appreciate is it felt like you were very attuned to what I was needing. How are you doing? What are you needing? And I think we really accommodated each other's schedules. You were on a different time frame. Initially, you were supposed to be here for just about 48 hours. And fortunately, your flight got canceled Sunday. So instead of leaving at noon, you left at 10:30. So it actually gave us another day together. But trying to make sure that you stayed more on your East Coast schedule, you got rest because it was a red eye. You wouldn't get a full night's sleep. So my value for you, and I think you went along with it, I don't think I strong-armed you, was take a nap in the evening here before you had your flight so that if you didn't get sleep, you'd get some. But it just felt so easy being together and navigating whatever we wanted to do. And that often meant coming home and resting or taking a nap and then figuring out what was going to work.
Yeah. It's funny. I feel like we kind of lived, there was an embodiment of Marshall Rosenberg's work, the nonviolent communication, where you do check in with your needs and any feelings are interpreted. not as meaning anything about us, but just as a need getting met or not, and those frequent checking in, the strategies to get the needs met could be in conflict. So I had a high need of just spending time with you.
Mm-hmm.
And that strategy might have come in conflict with my need for sleep, but to separate those out and to be careful of any meaning we were making about that.
Right. And I don't think we did at all. I think it was just what was in front of us and really not anything. I'm jumping ahead, but it's funny. Even today, when we connected to talk, I think I'm usually super tuned into you and your energy and how are you responding to me and then making that about me. And because I'm feeling really secure in our attachment, I did not personalize that today. Like it didn't go through that filter of like, oh, is everything okay? Do I need to just relaxing in the attachment, which is really, really nice.
Yes. Yes. I mean, that's been, I think, where I've been at in my journey for the last couple of years has been, am I hustling for my attachment needs to get met or can I rest? And one's sort of motivated by fear that the attachment won't be there. And there's all this laundry list of stuff I have to do. And if I don't do them, then, oops. And then the other is really motivated by kind of just a trust that I can rest, that we're connected. There's a trust in communication. And I do think that our friendship really helped me anchor that. Like you're my anchor. You're my person in a lot of ways. And for
you to me.
Yeah. And for this particular life exercise, it was showing up vulnerable. I remember those kind of early polos where I would show up vulnerable, kind of let you see what I might have been going through, and then howl like, okay, now I know you don't want me on the podcast anymore. And it's okay because I'm such a mess or disaster or whatever. And it's funny. It's really been beautiful watching the progression because, of course, that doesn't happen anymore. Other stuff might happen.
Right.
But this resting in the attachment with you, taking the risk to be vulnerable, and then having the vocabulary to talk about it, I think has really been valuable. And your understanding and reflections and holding space. And it's about me and whatever I'm going through. And then that's allowed me to see really what triggers attachment wounds in other relationships that I might be in, how to take care of myself. And again, not making the meaning that that's something that that person is going through on their journey. And it's funny, a part of this too has been that like existential angst that I always had has kind of flipped, where now like I realize we all are on our separate paths and it is, but instead of it being like so deeply lonely and I'm scrambling to be connected because that feels terrifying, it's more like, oh, hey, look, this was fun. Our paths overlapped for 72 hours. Or if it's physical space or emotionally, just feeling very close and understood and that it doesn't get messy or complicated.
Yeah. Yeah. Some very tangible examples. And because I feel really safe with you, we went out to eat in Ocean Beach and you were going to get oysters. And if you and I did not have the relationship that we do, you would have said, do you like oysters? And I just would have said no. And the truth is, I've never had them. I think they're slimy. I think it would not be enjoyable. The thought of something sliding down my throat just feels like yucky. And it kind of scares me. But I feel safe enough with you to be honest. And then you're like, do you want to try it? I'm like, I don't think so. And then you asked again, but you weren't pushing. And I did try a little bit. I had 3 bites. And I don't think that allowing for you creating safety, for me knowing that my thoughts and feelings are safe. So it's about you, but it's not about you. But being able to have that holding space to go like, ew, I don't think so. And then having it be okay to try it, that to me is huge. It really is. And the other thing I've really been looking at is how I feel reflected in your eyes and taking that back and empowering myself. I can't remember what it was, if I was having some nervousness about you coming out here. And we decorated the living room, the room that you stayed in, the front porch. I got a little gift basket for you that had snacks. I made a sign for you at the airport. that felt really important to me. And when I was having some of this, like, are you going to like me? Is the friendship going to last? I thought, I'm a really good friend. I did it because I wanted to, not to impress you, but it was important for me to have this be special for you. And I often have this sense of who I am in the reflection of your eyes, which is not a bad thing. And part of what I want you, the listener, to walk away with is, how do we take these positive parts of ourselves that we experience with others and take that back to ourselves so that we have that reflection of who we are through our own eyes. And a very minor thing, I was in my bathroom, the bathroom that you and I shared the other day, and I opened the shower. I showered while you were here, but I think I just saw it from the outside. I opened the shower and it's dirty in there, and the shower liner has stains on it. My immediate thought was like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. Were you grossed out? I wanted to text you. I wanted to apologize. I wanted to get reassurance from you. And I thought, housekeeping is not my favorite thing to do. And this is how I live. And if you came and you looked at it and you thought, oh my God, this is so disgusting, you could have asked for cleaner. You could have cleaned it yourself. If you have judgment, this is how I live. And do I wish that my house were clean and whatever the other word that I'm supposed to say is? Of course, I would love that. Is that a value for me? It is, but I just can't seem to do that all the time. And so instead of reaching out and asking for reassurance from you, I thought, I'm a really good friend. I'm really loyal and was very present for you and had a great time. And if you have a problem with my shower, well, I can put out cleaning supplies for you next time if it really bugs you that much. I mean, I don't even know that it does, but this is a very minor example, but this is really important for where does this show up in your life where you want somebody else to reassure you. And I think that there are times in our growth where we do need that reassurance because we've internalized these messages that, for my family, I have a lot of judgment, like that's filthy, that's disgusting. And like, it's dirt. It's just not clean. You know, it's not moldy. It's not anything that's a health hazard. It's just not clean. How can you take those things that you judge in your life? Of course, you want to show up differently. And the reality is this is how you show up sometime. And how can you be okay with that? And how can you turn inward towards the other strengths that you have? And I mean, this is ridiculous, but it's like, if you don't want to be friends because my shower is dirty, oh, well, I have a lot to offer and I have a dirty shower.
It's so funny. I didn't even notice the shower. You know, I didn't. You're saying it right now. And I'm like, was it? I don't know. There was soap and shampoo. I mean, my needs were all met and there was water. So
And we haven't talked about this because this came up for me after you left. And because I didn't text you or ask you about it, I thought I can manage.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
But I think we go through these contortions that you didn't even notice. And that could have historically done me in. And I could have had shame about it and a spiral. And I did clean the toilet out because it was yucky before you got here. And I did that out of motivation because you were coming. If you weren't coming, it would still be yucky because, like, I don't mind having a yucky toilet. So looking at what is the drive behind what we do, and there's no right or wrong, but to just bring these to our awareness and look at it with curiosity.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do value non-judgment. And I think, again, if that's something that's really important to someone and they make sure and they're doing it for themselves, and then that's something we can appreciate. But we can't be perfect, right? Like, we are limited by space and time and energy. And it's a way to express our values, really. What do we want to spend our time and energy doing? And you can't choose it all. I mean, I just gifted myself a house cleaner, which is wonderful. Mm-hmm. This is the first time, I think, in my adult life that I've done that. And I'm enjoying it, but it's there in the budget sheet. I could be putting that money towards, like, my next car or something, you know? So it's something that we're playing with. It's like your values in action. And prior to having the cleaner, I would have categorized my housekeeping philosophy is to make everyone else feel really good about their housekeeping. Which is just, It's kind of a joke, but that's a concrete example of how it shows up. And I used to tell people, like, it's a compliment. You are trusting me not to be judgy. And this is not the focus of our friendship. And it's okay if it is for other people. I mean, I don't really know who those people are, but if they're you, then that's great, you know? And often, again, if we look at our histories, I had rooms in my house growing up that we weren't allowed in because they were like museums, you know? And so that to me, I like the kind of lived in look.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. The other thing that was really interesting for me is I have this, and I think there's truth in this. My kids are launched. They're not in the home anymore. It's Steve and I, although Josh and his girlfriend Tori and Zeke were here for Saturday and Sunday while you were here, which was lovely. We can talk about that if we have time. But I have much fewer moving pieces than you do. And so often when I know that you're with your kids or you're with your partner and I'm needing something, I feel like I'm an intrusion. I really have this wound of too much that I walk around with and then feeling like I'm taking you away and knowing that if it's important, you will always make time for me. But then like, is this important? I know where you're at. Should I text you? Should I polo you? And having you here and having people from your life want time and attention with you, I felt so generous and spacious about it. Of course, take your time. We'd be in the middle of something and you'd get a phone call and I'd go in the other room and let you have your time. It was so easy for me to have that generosity of spirit. And I think you felt a little bit like, are you sure you're okay with this? Do you want me to do this later?
Yeah, I did.
And you had something go on with your eye, so we needed to go get some medical help for you. I think you're fine. But you were apologetic about that. And it was very easy for me to make space for that. And what that helped me see from the other side is, oh, I have room for the other people in your life. Therefore, there's room for me. And with you, when you left, while you were here, I've talked about this before, that I've had an eating disorder in the past. I think my relationship with food, I had a therapist that said you can't have a relationship with food. I'm going to say it. My relationship with food is often an indicator of where I'm at if I'm feeling anxious or I'm craving sweets or certain things. It's a great barometer. And when you were here, I didn't eat the things that I normally do. We got some sweets. I wasn't interested. I was feeling so seen, and my internal, like spiritual needs were being so met that food was just not even on my radar. And I had this sense of when you have the best meal in the world and you're just satisfied and satiated and not really wanting for anything. And I think for me, a lot of my anxiety and depression has been about loneliness and feeling like I don't fit and needing something and not feeling okay. And I really just down to the core felt so satiated. And since you've left, that stayed with me. I'm riding it. It could be gone any minute. But again, looking at how can I take that and internalize that sense of well-being, because this is about me. It's about you and our relationship, but this is also about me. And how do I create that sense of well-being within myself to continue carrying that on? Because it's not about you. It's really about me and the part that I bring to the relationship.
Yeah, such a great question, right? I keep coming back to, well, and I'm really curious too, like, how do we do this for each other, right? Mm-hmm. How do we do this for each other? It feels like it's got a lot of moving parts, but the one thing is I keep coming back to these attachment wounds. And so like a metaphor that I like to use for the attachment wounds, it's like when you were a child, and this is where Lindsay Gibson's work is so important. The people that you are surrounded with, whether these are caregivers or siblings or teachers, other children, reflect back to you information about yourself. And a lot of times those mirrors can get distorted. I would start there. Like all of our, because a perception being what it is, you know?
Sure.
If a parent feels like the child's tantruming or behavior, instead of it just being a developmental stage, it's normal if it's some sort of bad reflection on their parenting or something like that. How often, I mean, I know I've even felt that tug as a parent and had to take a deep breath and kind of ground myself. If I were to run with that, I would be giving that child a real warped mirror to look into. And so I think part of what our friendship has done for me, how do we make those mirrors as undistorted as possible? And sometimes just saying, hey, there's going to be a little distortion here is clearing, because you're like, oh, okay, that's not on my face. That's a speck on the mirror, as opposed to.
Right.
So it's not about being perfect or being able to be this like perfectly clear mirror for each, because I don't know that that's possible. But the less we're able to make stuff about ourselves, and this is in our internal relationship too. Like I have some big decisions that I have to make, and I've been doing an experiment since the end of last summer that I don't think is really working out. And instead of giving myself a really hard time, I was just talking to someone today. I was like, well, if I observe myself in my natural habitat, I have not done those things. So I must not want to. And just being that observant instead of judging myself, why didn't I? Again, I'm confined by time and space and energy. And that hasn't, if I haven't gotten around to it since last August, it's probably not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And
mm-hmm.
that can be, so I'm giving myself a pretty accurate mirror of myself instead of it being warped with, I've had to bang out like a lot of big warps and some mirrors, about who we actually are, how to really see ourselves as we are.
Yeah. Yeah. I had a thought that I wanted to continue and I lost it. And when you were talking, I got it. So I have this gremlin, like I'm just pulling it back to me, but I'm actually continuing the thought that I forgot.
Go for it.
But with this feeling of being too much when you were in your environment and having room for you when you were here in my environment with the people from your life back home, what I've noticed since you've returned is I'm not having that sense of measuring of, am I being too much? And it's kind of interesting. You and I didn't FaceTime for quite some time. We talked on the phone a few times initially, but it was primarily Marco Polo. And we had a couple phone calls, and then I'm terrible with time, but maybe in the last 9 months, maybe it's been more, we've done some FaceTiming, but it's been primarily Marco Polo. And since you've returned, it's funny, I think one day we FaceTimed twice, but it wasn't coming from a place of, oh, we have to connect. It's like you had time, or, oh, I've got time. Do you want to, we'd be poloing and, do you want to FaceTime? But there's been this resting in the attachment for me and not worrying about, well, who are you with? And am I interrupting you? And is this being too much? And I already left a polo for you, or not leaving a polo for a day because I felt so connected and full that I really had nothing to say, which again is just such an internal shift. And maturity is not the right word, but it's not that counting. I don't even have language for it.
Yeah. So thinking about the words, right? Like, what are we talking about? I think it's a combination of safety and then that, like, not making it about us. And we talked about this a long time ago in a podcast, right? Where it's, I think we used an example, like if I were Tigger and I got all upset because I made it about me that Eeyore was Eeyore instead of being more Tigger-like, and that meant I was a bad Tigger or something silly like that.
Right.
But if I took it personally that you didn't like oysters and started to cajole you and wanted, because it meant something about me and my acceptability, and you had to be, which I do think is a little bit, I'm trying to decide if it's a maturity thing or if it's just, I don't know, like a spacious or an open-mindedness kind of a thing. I'm thinking about my own children because I know I sent you Aster's precepts today.
I was actually thinking about doing that as a podcast episode because it's so beautiful. It's kind of like these are his constructs for good living.
Yeah.
That's how I would interpret what the precept is.
Yeah. I think part of the reason why we're doing the podcast and why I think it's important for us to sit and try and come up with languaging, because when I say, how do we do this for each other? I'm not just talking about us. I believe in nonviolent communication, like that has a part to play. And then how do we do this? How do we understand our attachment wounds, how they show up in relationship with other people, how to make space for it and not make it about us? And I know there were several months last year where I worked really hard on tracking and feeling and releasing my need to become self-defensive. What was that really about? Because that got in the way of a lot of things. We're grabbing the word maturity. I know that for me, it's coming at a mature age, but I think I'm bequeathing some of this to my kids a little earlier on. Some of these ideas that someone else's reaction to you is as much about them as it is about whatever you're providing them to push against.
Yeah. I think the final two things, because we need to wrap up and I want to give you a chance if there's anything that you have to share. We were able to go paddling on Saturday and Pat joined us. And Pat took this beautiful picture. If you're on any social media and you follow me, I did post on Instagram at Unapologetically Sensitive. I also changed my TikTok name. So it's at unapologetically sensitive, but there was no room for the E. So I do have a new TikTok handle, but all the content is there. I made a video for you, Jen, that I posted there also. And just the joy on both of our faces, and to have you in my world doing something that I love was one of the most joyful experiences that I think I've ever had.
Yeah, me too. It was so delightful. I was saying, like, how many times have I said on the podcast how much I wanted to do that with you? Or I think I'm joking, of course, but it's illustrating how I feel, is like wanting you and Steve to adopt me, or I want to be you when I grow up, or, So to get that chance, it was really, really cool. I remember feeling like when I had stepped into your house, because I've seen parts of your house, but only not in 3 dimensions, right? Not in like real time surrounding me. So it felt like I was stepping into like a world that I had created in my head that had come to life in some ways. Right. And that was beautiful. And yeah, I'm still sort of like, oh my gosh, pinch me. Like, did that happen?
Yeah.
That was so cool.
Well, I think that was my experience of you, because I've only experienced you 2-dimensional, and experiencing you 3-dimensional solidified something for me. And it's not like who you are changed, but there's something that just shifted for me that felt grounded and more secure. And because you only brought a little carry-on and a bag with you coming, and then you bought 5 hoodies while you were here to bring home.
Whoops.
Yeah, do the ninja packing thing so that you could hopefully carry on, which you were able to, because I'm a really good packer.
Yeah.
But you had to leave a couple things here in order to make room. And I'm really big into transitional objects. And if you don't know what that is, if you have a young child and a parent's going to be gone, that maybe they'll leave a scarf or a little piece of jewelry or something that belongs to the person who's leaving. And so it's not the person, but it's something that belongs to them. And I'm way big on transitional objects. My son, who's going to be going into the Navy, was gone for a week, but his truck was here for the week. And every time I came home, it's like I'd park my car next to him. Like I felt like I was just cuddling with him. Mm-hmm. Not that I cuddle with my almost 23-year-old son, but it gave me a sense of security. But it's been really nice. And it, not in a teenagey way. I remember in high school that there was a guy that I really liked, and I told him I was cold, and he let me take his coat home with me, and I slept with it because that was like getting as close to him as I could. It doesn't feel like it's that obsessed or driven, but the last 2 days you left me some rainbow socks, and I put them on yesterday and today. I'm like, I just feel like, oh, I have a little bit of Jen with me. And it's been really lovely that I just have that sense of connection, but not like, oh, I have to be connected and I'm going to lose the connection. And then the final thing that for me that I want to share is the only little thread that's come up for me a few times, and I've told you about this, and I'm just really curious, is this little thread about I want to devalue what our friendship means. Oh, it's not that important. It's not going to last. This isn't really true. And I know that that's a protective defense mechanism. And what I'm doing is just getting curious, noticing when it happens. I've shared it with you because it doesn't activate you, and just going, isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
I think I have a version of that too.
Yeah.
Tends to, I guess I don't know. It's like I want to be aloof or something, or not.
Mm-hmm.
And, I put that through the lens right now of that's me being connected to that existential crisis where we are really alone, and that everything does end. None of this ends well, right? At the very end. Oh, hopefully it'll end well. That's what meditation is all about, preparation for a good death. But that's kind of like where I will take it out to. And then it's an invitation to really savor the points of connection when they do happen, and whether they're happening with a really deep friendship, or even just sharing a smile or a few words with a stranger waiting for a plane. That it's these different points of connection that we can really savor, because at the end of the day, there's nobody else in here with me all the time than me. I think that made it into Aster's precepts too. I'm going to ask them their permission. Maybe we can talk about it.
Yeah. Yeah. One of us misgendered Aster, and I can't remember if it was you or me, but something popped up in my brain that one of us misgendered them while we were talking.
Yeah. It's a struggle, but I'm still at it.
Yeah.
And they commented the other day that I'm doing much better.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was nice.
Yeah. We do the best we can.
Yes.
Anything else before we sign off?
Thank you, my dear friend.
Yeah. And our plan now is twice a year to just plan on seeing each other.
Yes. Yeah.
So,
because we can.
Yeah. Because we can. Absolutely. Absolutely. And knowing that it took this amount of time, I don't think I would have been ready before now to see you in person. I think it took time for me to be ready to FaceTime. It took time for me to see you in person. Whether that was real or imagined, it doesn't even matter. And once we got together, we're like, why haven't we done this sooner? And now we're going, we need to do this more often. It's really such a nurturing thing for both of us.
Yes. I like that there's not pushing, like that we've been that patient.
Yeah.
And kind of honoring where we're at. And yeah, now's the time.
Yeah. All right, dear friend. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Bye. Hey again. So how was that? Did you hear some things that were helpful? I hope you did. If you struggle with attachment injuries, with intimacy in relationships, wanting more vulnerability, struggling with communication, challenges with work, boundaries, really all of the stuff that Jen and I work with, we would love to provide support to you, help you thrive in how you're wired. If you're interested in working with Jen, you can reach out to Jen at jen@heartfulnessconsulting.com. I love sending you to my website because I have a form there that you can fill out that gives me information that helps me know what time zone you're in, what times are good for you to connect, how you want to connect. So that's why I send you to my website at unapologeticallysensitive.com. We would both love to help you thrive how you're wired. I think that's all I have to say. I have not figured out exactly what I want to say at the end, but I'm not going to say what I've been saying. What I will say is sensitivity is nothing to apologize for. How you're wired, how you show up in the world is important. You matter. Your feelings matter. What is important to you matters. And it's okay if people don't always understand that or get it. You have a right to be here. You have a right to take up space. It's okay if people don't understand you or get you. Doesn't make you wrong. You are beautiful exactly as you are. I think that's it. Have a blessed day.